guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a rather large, some might say huge, bookish unboxing book haul. There have been so many incredible releases over the past couple weeks. I have not stopped buying books. Needless to say, this is probably one of the most exciting book hauls for me personally that I've had in months. So many titles I want to get to right away, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the books I picked up, starting with my October selects for Book of the Month, who I'm also working with for this video. But if you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service, and every single month they curate a list of books from a variety of titles, authors, and voices in the community. There are always new releases and always hardback, and they're sent directly to your door. It's super easy to skip if you're not interested in a book for that month. They also now have audiobooks. There's truly so much to explore on Book of the Month. For the month of October, their book selection is like no other. Every book I wanted. In fact, many of the books I already had pre-ordered, and I lamented because I could have saved so much money if I got it through Book of the Month. And to make this month even more exciting, if you use the code SPOOKY, you're able to get your first box for only $5. Yes, $5. So if you haven't signed up yet, to me, this month is the month to check it out. Alrighty, so the first book, I can't wait to read this right away. The first book that is in my box is Starling House by Alex E. Haro. I mean, I can't even believe it. Starling House is described as a modern Gothic fantasy tale, and we all know how much I love a Gothic story. This book follows our main character Opal, and she is determined to get herself and her brother out of the small, nothing town that she has grown up in called Eden. There's literally nothing here aside from this old house from a very famous 19th century author who went missing over 100 years ago, and everyone in this town knows to stay far away from this creepy old house and the heir of this family named Arthur. But Opal has always been drawn to this property because one, she's always loved the books of this author, and two, she's always been curious about the mysteries inside this property. So when she's offered a part-time job to work here, she decides to accept and quickly gets pulled into all of these strange happenings of this place. I love a haunted house tale. I love a Gothic horror tale. I love that this also appears to have a dash of fantasy. This is the same author who wrote 10,000 Doors of January. I have heard such great things about this author's writing. I will be reading this book this month. And then the second book I picked up from Book of the Month, another book that is on my must-read list for the month, and that is The Unmaking of June Far by Adrienne Young. You can also get Adrienne Young's other book through Book of the Month, which I've read and really enjoyed, which is called The Spells of Forgetting, but this is Adrienne Young's newest release, and it's also set in a small town, but this time in a mountain town in North Carolina. We're introduced to our main character, June Far, who comes from a family that is known to be cursed, and they're also known to be running a very successful and beautiful flower farm. This curse has plagued this family for as long as anyone can remember, and has also taken our main character's mom, and she has been missing for over a decade. At the beginning of this book, June is determined to solve not only the mystery surrounding her missing mother, but also break the curse once and for all. I'm sure this is heavily atmospheric, very strange and beautiful. I also hope it has a dash of romance. I already know I love this author's writing. I imagine this book is going to be perfect peak fall vibe. So yes, I also grabbed this book as well. But those are the two books I picked up from Book of the Month this month. Again, I'll have my offer code as well as a link to their site down below. I really cannot emphasize enough how good the October selects are. So peruse at your own risk. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the other books I grabbed this month as well, because there are a lot of them. Oh, yes. Okay, so the first book I have to show off is another pre-order, very anticipated, perfect fall read release, and that is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brienne Randall. This is described as a witchy, cozy, rom-com, small town setting of a book. Every year, I always try to find a few of these to add to my TBR because they're one, great palette cleansers, and two, just so adorable and so much fun. The story seems to center heartbreak, love, family, loss, and magic. In it, we follow our main character Sadie, and Sadie always believed the 4 heartbreak curse that came along with her magic was always worth the cost. But at the beginning of the story, her grandmother, the backbone and heart of her family, was just diagnosed with very aggressive cancer, having only weeks to live, and her first heartbreak, Jake, has just returned back to her town after 10 years of being away, and Sadie feels like her carefully crafted life is beginning to unravel before her eyes. Everything gets even worse when her estranged brother also comes back, bringing like family secrets to light. And again, I just feel like this book is going to be emotional, full of a lot of small town elements, but also family and romance, which I feel like is a good combination. I've heard really good things about this. Obviously, this is a witchy rom-com kind of Hallmark movie-esque story, which is definitely what I am personally looking for. So I was really looking forward to this book coming out this month. So obviously I had to grab it. I also think you can get this through Book of the Month this month. I'm just saying. The next book I grabbed is another pre-order and book I hope to read this month, and that is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This book is everywhere. The reviews for this book are glowing. They're stunning, and they've completely convinced me that I need to add this book to my TBR ASAP. I'm actually about to start this book, like literally after I finish filming this video. But this book is said to be like achingly atmospheric, sharp, full of folklore and magic, and in it we're introduced to our main character Effie, and for as long as Effie can remember, she has been plagued by dreams of like the Fae, and also this sort of story of a girl having to destroy the Fae King, and her whole life she has found solace in a specific book by a very famous author, and this has kind of always been her escape. Fast forward to present day, she has basically been offered an opportunity to participate in a competition to like restore this very famous author's estate. So she travels there, she meets a variety of people, including a grumpy like college student who is determined to prove that this famous author that Effie loves is actually like fake, like his whole legacy is a lie. But from there, both of these characters get wrapped up in sort of a magical issue plaguing this place that I believe has to do with the Fae. Again, I hear this story really balances a lot of things. I hear the personal journey that Effie goes on is one that's really stunning. Obviously, I think this has like academic rivals to lovers in it too, and just the Fae-centered magical parts of this just really call out to me. I really like Ava Reid's writing. I've read some of her other books and I've liked them. I didn't love them, but I feel like this could possibly be a home run for me. And again, I will be reading this book very soon. Next up, I have some publisher mail. The first book is Fall of Rune and Wraith by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Here's the deal with Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have read some of her books and I really liked them. I find them really fun, entertaining. I like romantasy, and some other books I've read of hers I didn't like so much. So I was curious to check out and read her newest release in a new series. But this book is set in a fantasy world that has been destroyed by the god. Only 9 cities have been spared. Each city is also separated by vast wilderness full of monsters and all different types of danger. And each city also has like one guardian who's kind of in charge of everything, and it's like a very dangerous place to live. In this story, we follow our main character who is kind of a courtesan but a spy in disguise, and she also has kind of a magical power that's intuition almost, but it allows her to kind of have this very real gut feeling, leading her in and out of safety, and also allows her to gather very specific information. And one day while traveling the forest, she actually saves a prince, and she's not sure if saving this prince is going to be a good or bad thing, and her life gets very, very complicated from there. I'm curious about this. I'm always on the hunt for a new romantasy story. This also feels like it could possibly be leaning more fantasy than romantasy, or perhaps more balanced than some of her other books I've read. I'm not sure. It does sound like a lot of fun. I feel like it could be entertaining. So I'm curious to read and review this and let y'all know my thoughts. Alrighty, time to open up the next package. Oh, I failed. There we go. Oh, this is so exciting. Okay, so the next book I have to show off is Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is obviously V.E. Schwab's newest release, the first book in a new series set in the same world as A Darker Shade of Magic, a fantasy series I've read many years ago and really enjoyed at the time, so I'm curious to see how this world is going to expand. I believe this book is only set like a few years after the events of the initial trilogy, but we're following a new set of characters, particularly a main character who's kind of set in White London. If you're not familiar with this world, it's basically a fantasy landscape with magic and parallel worlds. There's basically a bunch of Londons that are layered on top of each other, ranging first with Grey London, which has no power, to Red London, which has a lot of magic that's like safe to use. We have White London that's like devouring itself with how powerful its magic is. It's like a dark and dangerous place. Then we have Black London, which no one can access. Our main character lives in White London, who is the child queen of White London and all of the blood and danger that exists in this place. I'm really interested to check out, again, this first book to a new series. I enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing quite a bit, and I'm just in general excited to be back in this world. So yes, I'm so excited about the Fragile Threads of Power, though I like the old covers more. This is pretty, but the old stylization I do think was better. I'm not gonna lie. Next 2 books I have to show off, I recently picked up at a book shopping trip, a little impulse buying, if you will. The first one is A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first book to the Age of Madness series by this author. I have been marathoning, let's just say casually, some fantasy series recently, and I feel like Joe Abercrombie is going to be the next author I'm going to turn to marathon a bit. I've read his First Law trilogy and really enjoyed it. I have his standalone novels, which I still need to read, but I wanted to go ahead and just stock up on this second trilogy set in this world. It's tricky because I can't really read the synopsis of this, I don't believe, because I think a lot of his books are connected, but from what I can tell you, Joe Abercrombie is known for his very character-focused, grimdark fantasy works. His First Law trilogy brings together an unlikely crew of characters, like kind of saving the world from a dark prophecy. We have his middle works, which follows various assassins and mercenaries as they go about their business. And this trilogy, I'm not entirely sure, and I don't want to know quite yet because I need to read some other books first. But again, I grabbed this from the bookstore. It's a nice paperback, and I'm sure this is going to be bloody, violent, and disturbing, as I would expect from this author. And then the next book I grabbed was another anticipated release, and that is the Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. This book is a historical fantasy story, and it's said to be for fans of Catherine Arden, and the Winternight trilogy is like one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time from the writing style and just his influences. So when I saw that, it was like an immediate pickup for me. But this book is set during the era of the Spanish Inquisition, and it's inspired by Jewish folklore, which just sounds so cool. In this story, we're introduced to 2 very talented young girls. First is Toba, who is incredibly smart, but she has been taught her whole life to kind of keep her head down, to not raise her voice, to not really draw too much attention to herself or her talents. And we also have Naphtali, who has always been able to see things that aren't real and dream things into existence, and she's kind of viewed as a family disappointment. At the beginning of the story, the Spanish Inquisition is basically forcing all Jews to convert or die, and our main characters flee from their homes to basically save themselves. And with them, they also bring particular items that the Spanish Inquisition want. So they are now being hunted through this landscape, and they flee through a place called the Pomegranate Gates, and I think that kind of transports them to this sort of folklore landscape. This book just sounds incredible. The influences, what I hear about the writing style, just everything about it really feels like something I'm going to love. It's a first book to a new series, and I personally cannot wait to pick this book up. I will be reading this soon. I love anything inspired or influenced by folklore. It's just always one of my favorite like buzzwords for books, for good reason, because it's just so cool. Alrighty, moving on to another box to open. This is a heavy one. Oh yeah, okay. There are 2 very popular books in here, so let's go through them. Okay, so the first book I bought is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. I recently read and did an entire reading vlog for Red Rising, which overall I thought was just okay, but a lot of people implored me to check out book 2. A lot of people say the series really kicks off, the writing gets better, a lot of the issues that I had in book 1 would not be present or would be lessened in book 2. So I'm trusting you guys, and I decided to pick it up and check it out for myself. But obviously the Red Rising series trilogy is a very beloved like sci-fi fantasy hybrid book. It's set in a futuristic society that is incredibly stratified, and it's stratified by color. Each individual is a color, and each color has a specific job or expectation within society. And as you can imagine, it's a very unfair, violent society as well. Our main character Darrow is a red, which is the lowest color, and most reds are basically relegated to physical labor, and they're kind of kept separate from everyone else. There's lots of secrets and misinformation, as you can imagine. At the beginning of this book, Darrow basically loses everything, and he decides to get involved with rebellion, and he's physically remade into the highest color in this society, which is gold, and he enters like a school, and he has to participate in a competition to get like a really good appointment because he basically wants to tear apart the society from the inside out. And it sort of turns into this like Roman military strategy competition. It has a lot of things happening. It is interesting. I liked the plot. I didn't love everything about it, but nevertheless, I did pick up book 2. I think I'm gonna read this soon before I forget too much, and yeah, we'll just see. We'll just see. I feel like if I read book 2, I have to at least read book 3. I'm really wanting to like this, I promise. So I did buy this. And then I don't know what came over me. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, I'm not reading this book. The book I picked up is A Court of Silver Flames by S.J. Maas. yeah, I don't know. I just got a hankering. I just got a desire to pick up and read this book. I was not expecting this to happen. A lot of people, a lot of my friends who didn't love book 3 of the ACOTAR series, which I personally didn't. I really enjoyed the first 2 books for what they were. But I thought book 3 was boring. Said this book like really picked up again. It was very entertaining. So I feel like I'm going to at least give it a try, especially because I do like a lot of the characters this particular novel centers, which is Nesta. And also, I feel like I need to be up to date in S.J. Maas's universe before her next book comes out. I feel like it'll be beneficial to me. So with that in mind, I've decided to read this. I decided to buy this, and I feel like I'm going to read it soon. I haven't read a Sarah J. Maas book in a while, and I've read a lot of her books, and I've enjoyed a lot of her books. I like romantasy, as we've already established. So I did buy this, and we're just going to see. I hope I like it. It's a long book, so I want to like it. I don't like these new covers. Tragic. This was a tragic redesign, I'm going to be honest. The next 2 books I'm going to quickly run through because I feel like I have not stopped talking about them. And the 2 books I'm talking about are Rune by John Gwynne and Wraith by John Gwynne. I have recently been marathoning the series, which is The Faithful and the Fallen, so I had to pick up book 3 and book 4 to read them because I was flying through these installments so quickly. I needed to have them on hand. But if you're not familiar, The Faithful and the Fallen series is a very vast multi-POV fantasy story by John Gwynne. It's set in a fantasy landscape that was destroyed thousands of years ago between a conflict between humans and giants, kind of brought upon by the gods of this world. Now, fast forward to present day, this once very dangerous conflict is beginning to kind of rear its head, and the forces of good and evil are kind of like working to go against each other. In book 1, we're introduced to a slew of characters, including a chosen one character, but throughout the entire series, especially through these last 2 books, things really escalate and balloon in a way that you would truly never anticipate. There are so many characters to fall in love with. There's so many characters to despise and hate. There's so many plot lines to get attached to. Such great combat writing. I really could not put these books down. So yeah, I had to buy books 3 and 4 to add to my collection so I could read them. I read the first 3 books in this very long fantasy series in a span of like 2 weeks. So if that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. But yeah, I bought these 2 books as well. Alrighty, moving on. Oh, I'm so excited about this. Okay, so another really good fall read, I think. This is actually a YA novel, and I know I don't read a lot of YA now, but the book I picked up was Belladona by Adeline Grace. I've seen this book like all over the internet. People really love this story, and I believe this is a gothic horror YA novel. And gothic horror is kind of like a buzzword for me right now. I will read any version of it, apparently. I just can't get enough. In this story, we're introduced to our main character named Signa, and the synopsis of this book is rather mesmerizing and strange and peculiar in all the ways that I personally love. Basically, for most of Signa's life, she has been passed from guardian to guardian to guardian after the passing of her mother, and all of those guardians have also all met an untimely end. And most of the time too, no one really in Signa's life has made a large attempt to like get to know or to care for her, more interested in her like vast fortune. Very like series of unfortunate events vibes, if you know what I mean. At the beginning of this book, she's on to one of her last most distant relatives, and she moves to their very like glamorous and big home. There she meets a very eccentric family. The father, who's still grieving the passing of his wife, throws these like wild parties. The son is like determined to like save his family's reputation, and the daughter suffers from some type of like mysterious illness. And also, after shortly arriving at this book, our main character is visited by the ghost of her mother, and her mother tells her that she has been poisoned. And so our main character now wants to figure out what happened, solve this mystery, and she starts working with the stable boy that lives on this property. They begin to grow close. Again, this book just has a lot of very interesting inputs, lots of family drama, lots of intrigue, mystery, big spooky house, truly say no more. And I love like a glittering, wealthy family that's like toxic and falling apart. It just works, you know? Alrighty, moving on to this larger box. I'm pretty sure I know what's in here, and I am really looking forward to it. This tape. Yes. So I grabbed myself a new cookbook cookbook. I got Nothing Fancy by Allison Roman. Recently, I hosted a dinner party with my friend Lucy, and Lucy has this cookbook and we cooked some things out of it, and quite frankly, it was delicious. And I've actually made some of this chef's recipes before and I've really liked them. I feel like she has a really good balance of like interesting things that like expand my palate and challenge me to try new things, but they're also not so complicated that it's like too hard for a weeknight, which I feel like is key. And the aesthetics of this book are truly on another level. She also has a dessert cookbook. Not to ramble too long about this cookbook that I also want to get, but I made this chicken recipe recently. It's the roast chicken with shallots and figs, and it was so good. So this is my endorsement for that. So yeah, I bought this. And I'm really excited to test out some of these recipes this fall and winter, read through it. It's gonna be tasty. Alrighty, we are in the home stretch, I promise. So let's open the next package. Oh yes, okay. The next book is one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and the fact that I only learned of this book's existence as of like a few months ago is shocking to me, and that is The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft. Josiah Bancroft wrote one of my all-time favorite series, which is the Senlin Ascend series. He has such a way with like writing, really strange, peculiar, and like imaginative concepts, but also high fantasy. Just his writing style and how all of his plot elements come together, I just truly love so much. And this book just sounds like an absolute delight and also sounds so weird, which I love. And this basically follows a husband and wife team called the Hexologist, and they're basically hired and known all throughout London to basically solve any type of magical quandary, no matter how weird. And they're basically called to handle a very challenging case. They're approached by the royal secretary and told the king pleads to be baked into a cake, going so far as to wedge himself inside of a lit oven. And the Willoughbys, our main characters, soon find themselves embroiled in a mystery that could very well see the nation turn on its head. This just sounds like it's going to be weird and also kind of thrillery. I love a whodunit. I love like a mystery of the week. I'm hoping this is like a first book of many. The concept just sounds so fun and playful while still having so many really intriguing plot elements. Again, I already know I love this author's writing, and I just feel like his character dynamics are always so good. So I'll be reading this soon, and I'm really hoping I love it. But yeah, I did pre-order this as well. Alrighty, time to open up this last very large box, because I think there's only one book in here. If I recall correctly, what this could be. This is hard to open. And the last book of this book haul is Rouge by Mona Awad. Now, another perfectly situated fall read, if you ask me. And if you were wondering if I was excited about this book, it's like an understatement, because I loved Bunny by Mona Awad, and this is her take on a gothic, yes, another gothic read, fairy tale. A literary gothic fairy tale. Horror literary gothic fairy tale. This is described as Snow White meets Eyes Wide Shut, and the concept of it is very strange, but follows our main character Belle, and for as long as Belle could remember, she has always been really obsessed with skincare and beauty, spending hours like watching YouTube videos, like following any tutorials she can, and it's just been a very large part of her life. And unfortunately, though, at the beginning of the story, her estranged mother like mysteriously dies, and she goes to her mother's funeral. She's back in Southern California to attend. There she meets a mysterious woman, all dressed in red, who tells her that she knows why her mother died, and she just has to come with her and she'll answer questions. She follows this woman to this like spa. She goes down into it, and turns out her mother is part of this like culty spa, and she starts to like look into becoming a part of this culty spa too, and everything becomes rather unhinged from there. Mona Awad, I feel like, just takes some really interesting concepts and just really makes it a very strange fever dream kind of experience. Her books are like very A24. Honestly, I feel like knowing as little as possible going into it is always better. I like her concepts quite a bit, and again, I really enjoyed Bunnies. I feel like there's a high chance I'm gonna really love Rouge, especially because the influences of Rouge are some of my favorites as well, so I'm just really looking forward to checking this book out. Alrighty guys, that is my very massive, very large unboxing book haul. Again, big shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. I will again have my discount code and link down below, but thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!